If you spend enough time looking around YouTube filmmaking channels, you'll probably find a lot of people telling you why you should quit your job to follow your dreams, or about where to find inspiration for your next documentary project. And that's all well and good, but how do you actually put food on the table with those dreams, and how do you turn your inspiration into rent money? Is it actually possible to make money from documentary filmmaking, or is it just a lifelong passion project? The good news is that yes, it is very possible to make money, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the 3 main ways I make money in the documentary film industry. I'm not going to lie, you're probably not going to end up driving a Ferrari or chartering private jets to take you to go skiing in the Alps if you choose this business. But you can absolutely earn real money, and I'm guessing that if you're even interested in this career in the first place, you're probably not the type to want those things anyways. So how do I make money, and what kind of money are we talking about? Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Luke Forsyth, a documentary cinematographer and filmmaker, and on this channel, I teach the skills I've learned over 10 years working as a documentary filmmaker and photographer. Okay, so you're considering becoming a documentary filmmaker, and you want to know if you can actually make money doing it. The short answer is yes, absolutely. I've made 100% of my income through a camera for almost 10 years, and there is no reason why anyone else can't do the same thing. In fact, documentaries have never been more popular, and with the success of things like Tiger King and The Last Dance, big streaming platforms are on the lookout for the next big thing and throwing serious money towards documentary production companies. This is a golden age for documentaries in many ways, and unlike the past where the only way to see them was by going to a niche film festival, they're very mainstream and in demand these days. Documentaries are also much cheaper to make than narrative shows, and even the highest budget doc isn't a drop in the bucket compared to something like Game of Thrones. So how do you get a piece of the pie? Well, the first thing to acknowledge is that for most of us, including me, you're not going to be able to just wander around shooting anything you want and expect to get paid for it. Sure, if you spend years developing leads, building relationships with characters, and filming on your own, you can create a very powerful film and maybe even sell it, but that's a huge amount of work and the exception, not the rule. You should absolutely make personal projects, and they're going to be key to building up your early portfolio and landing those first gigs, but to actually make enough to live a middle-class life, you're probably going to need jobs. When I was working as a photojournalist, I spent the first 2 years of my career traveling around, mostly in Asia, shooting dozens of small photo stories that I uploaded to my personal website. It was an amazing time in my life, and I built up a whole set of skills like how to deal with strangers, how to work in a difficult environment, or how to find a story in a place you don't know very well. I built my first portfolio in that time, and quite a few of those pictures are still on my website today. But in that whole time, I made a total of $0 and I had to take on several temporary jobs that I didn't really want to do just to pay for it all. Obviously, it's not sustainable to be paying to shoot all the time, and eventually I figured out that I needed to set up somewhere permanently so that editors knew where to look for me if they wanted to hire me. I ended up moving to Cambodia, and I stayed there for 4 years, and by the time I left, I was getting regular jobs for some of the biggest newspapers in the world. It took a while to get set up, but it did eventually work, and I started to get paid assignments. Actually, I made another video talking about how I got a picture on the front page of the New York Times, and I'll link to it somewhere up here. During my whole career as a photojournalist, I made pretty much all my money through assignments, not personal projects, and documentary production, for me anyways, hasn't been much different. Now, you might sell something here and there, but to really make enough money to live, you need the money coming in from a bigger production company or outlet. And that brings me to the first and the main way that I make money through documentaries, by working on other people's shows on a contract basis. I personally work as a DP, or a director of photography, which is basically just a fancy word for cameraman. But there are a bunch of other roles on documentary film crews besides filming. If you'd like me to make a separate video on what those different jobs are, let me know in the comments. The way this whole thing works is that a director or a production company will usually come up with an idea for a project and then pitch it to a network. If the network likes it, they'll greenlight the project and give the production company money to make it happen. Production companies don't usually have a full-time crew on staff, so every time they start a new show, they need to crew up and hire people. Now, if I have a relationship with that company, or if someone else recommends me to them, they'll give me a call and ask about availability. Then we'll negotiate rates, and if it's a good fit for everyone, I'll come on board for the duration of that shoot. When the shoot is over, I'll usually send the footage to them on a hard drive, and then that will be the end of it. For most of these jobs, I am nowhere near the edit, and as soon as the last day of shooting is over, I might not hear from anyone at that company again until another job comes up. I think a lot of people might imagine that I conceive, edit, and shoot everything I work on, but when you get into the higher budget shows, there are specialists at every stage of the project, and there could be a dozen or even hundreds of people involved by the end. I am just one of those specialists, just like an editor or a colorist. And once I've done my part, that's it. This is both good and bad. It's good because you aren't responsible for the finished product, and once you wrap a shoot, you get to go home and move on to the next thing, while the producers are stuck in an edit suite for the next 6 months. But it's bad because you get no creative control over the final film or show, and sometimes it's really frustrating to see the result of all your hard work and maybe not like the direction it took. But whether it's good or bad, that's the reality of being a contract DP. This is how I make the vast majority of my income. People call me and I film their documentary for them. They usually pay me a day rate for this, sometimes a weekly rate, but that's less common. Ideally, I'll also bring my own gear on the shoot and they'll rent it from me as well. But now, these days, a lot of the big production companies own their own stuff, so be careful about over-investing in gear thinking it will make you money. When I am able to rent it all out though, it can be great, and I'll always push to get my own gear on a shoot if possible. What you get paid for this varies hugely depending on your experience and what the show's budget is. To give you a general range though, a low-paying job might be around $350 a day, and a really high-paying job could be upwards of $1,200 or even $1,500 a day. I find that in docs, that's about the most I've ever heard of, but I'm sure there's a few ballers out there making more. I usually get somewhere in the middle of those two numbers, but I'm also sometimes willing to come down to meet someone's low budget if I think a project is really interesting. It's totally up to you to set your day rate, and you can make it as high as you want as long as someone's willing to pay it. Before you freak out and think that I must be sitting on piles of cash over here, remember that I only get paid for the days I work. Sometimes I work a lot, sometimes I don't work for months, so it really ends up balancing out. You charge a lot as a freelancer to compensate for the uncertainty of not getting a steady paycheck every week, and before you decide to become a contract DP like me, you're gonna have to decide for yourself if you're okay with that or not. When business is good, it can be really good, and when it's slow, like me, you'll probably question what you're doing with your life and think about getting a real job on a near daily basis. The next way I make money also involves shooting projects for other people, but the clients are a little bit different. Marketing strategies have changed a lot over the years, and more companies want their ads to look like documentary stories rather than highly produced infomercials like they did in the 90s. Think about a company like Patagonia that sells its products through short environmental or adventure films rather than shooting a bunch of models in a studio. They call these kinds of ads branded content, and basically it means shooting a documentary for a company. I've shot for National Geographic's branded content section, for example, where we took a Nat Geo photographer who specialized in water issues to a bunch of places across Canada while she talked to people about how they were trying to save water. It was pretty much like a documentary, except that it was paid for by a dishwashing company, and there were a bunch of scenes thrown in there of people loading dishwashers that I might not have put into a real doc. I also worked for a giant social media company that I cannot name, shooting customer profiles of people around the world who use their platform to grow small businesses. The company then used those success stories on their website to encourage other businesses to sign up. The company actually insisted that whoever got the job had to have worked for the New York Times before because they wanted it to look real and believable. There was no script, and they were real people with real businesses. But it was understood that I shoot in a certain way and stick to a bright aesthetic and avoid negative subject matter. It was using a documentary skill set and style, and it was based on real people, but when the money is coming from Silicon Valley, it's clearly not a real documentary. It's branded content. Branded content can be amazing in terms of making money. This is where documentary filmmakers can get a little taste of the kind of money being thrown around in the commercial world. And depending on the client, you could earn 3 or 4 times more than you can make shooting docs. Now, I wouldn't want to do this exclusively as I prefer to tell real stories, but doing a couple of these a year can really help pad the bank account. There's no set price for these jobs, but since I'm trying to be honest with you, I'll say that the highest paying one of these I've ever had was $4,000 a day.
$4,000 a day. $4,000 a day.
That was a short-lived deal, unfortunately, and I've never made that much again, or even close to that much, but it is possible with the right connections. The third way I make money is more in line with how I think a lot of people might imagine the life of a documentary filmmaker to be, which is by shooting and selling my own personal projects. Of the three, this pays by far the least, and if I only did this, I would not be able to survive. I've done a lot of big personal projects over the years, from traveling the Mekong River for 2 years to investigating Mexico's kidnapping epidemic, and most of the time time, the profit margins are very small, if there's any profit at all. From time to time, I might sell a short for a few $1,000s, but there have also been many more projects that I've tried that have never found a home. During the early days of COVID lockdowns in Canada, I created a series of short art movies where I filmed the empty city streets and set it to moody music, and was able to convince a telecom company to pay me for it. But most of the time, I'm lucky to break even on personal work. If you luck out or make something amazing, you might get a TV deal and find yourself running a big budget show, and in that case, you'll definitely get paid, but especially in the early stages of your career, that's not very likely. In total, I probably only make 5 to 10% of my total income from personal work in a good year. So if you're hoping you can make your car payments just from filming passion projects, I'm really sorry to burst your bubble. That might make it sound like shooting personal projects isn't worth it, but that is totally not true. Personal projects are probably the most important out there of all three to shoot because they help develop your personal style and show bigger clients what you're all about. When you work on a big budget doc or on branded content, you're just one of many people with an input, and usually the final product won't come out exactly like you would have done it. But your personal work is 100% in your control, and you can showcase your unique vision in a way that other paid work might not. Showing personal work to production companies you want to work for, or maybe having something go viral online, is one of the best ways to generate paid work for yourself, because people will see something they like and then they'll want you to bring that same style to their project. Personal work might not pay you back right away, but I found it is always worth it and can be much more worthwhile in the long run. You need to find your own balance between paying jobs and shooting your own stuff, but investing in stories you believe in is always a good idea. And that's it. Those are the three main ways I earn money as a documentary filmmaker. Making documentaries probably won't get you as rich or famous as you could get in Hollywood or the commercial world, but it is still totally possible to have a good life while doing meaningful work that has an impact. So if you're thinking about it and you're okay with the ups and downs of freelancing, I'd say go for it. I went all in and I can't imagine doing anything else, even if I can't use $100 bills as toilet paper. Yet. I'm really curious if that was what you were expecting or if that's not at all what people imagine. So let me know what you thought in the comments down below. And if you like that one, you might like this other one I made on why I think documentary filmmaking just might be the best job in the world. See ya.
And you keep on thinking that's just love.
That's just love.